A show of solidarity outside the Capitol and emotion in the chamber in the battle over sanctuary cities.
I'm an immigrant. My parents are immigrants. I represent a district filled with immigrants.
Despite protests and powerful words, Senate Bill 4 passes with more restrictions than before. We'll look closer at how that happened and what comes next.
Good morning and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Phil Prazen. The bill to ban sanctuary cities in Texas is one step closer to becoming law, and supporters added an amendment to give police more leeway to ask about someone's legal status. The debate lasted into the early morning hours Thursday, and it was emotional.
SB 4, anti-immigrant, anti-democratic, anti-constitutional.
The Department of Public Safety had to escort many people from the House chamber. They continued just outside. It was a tearful night for Democrats. Despite passionate pleas, Republicans had the numbers to beat them at every turn, beefing up the bill from when it came in.
Because all it does is scare people, create terror in the Hispanic community, and it feels like discrimination against our community.
She's also undocumented and unafraid.
Religious and grassroots groups held a vigil in the rotunda as a deal almost happened. Democrats at one point seemed willing to accept a watered-down version of the bill. In return, Republicans would not amend the bill to allow law enforcement to ask immigration status before an arrest was made. That deal fell through.
In the end, the bill passed with that controversial amendment. It lets a police officer ask about a person's immigration status while they're being detained instead of when they're arrested. What's the difference? Think of being pulled over by a police officer. If the officer asks you to get out of the car, say to take a sobriety test, you're being detained. Basically, you're not free to leave while the officer asks questions that could reveal evidence you committed a crime. An arrest means you're being charged with a crime. And that change could become the next focus of the fight over the bill, a fight that could come in the courts.
People in the state capitol know protests come just before the lawsuit.
This is going to cause a significant impact on the Hispanic community, a negative impact on the Hispanic community, and we shouldn't be bringing this. So whether it's legislative or judicial, we're going to keep fighting this bill.
Already there are threats to sue over SB 4, which would allow police officers to ask immigration status when they're investigating a crime. Before this, lawsuits followed Arizona's SB 1070, what critics dubbed the Show Me Your Papers law. It required local law enforcement to ask immigration status if they believed someone was here illegally. And that section was upheld in 2012 by the U.S. Supreme Court. Supporters of SB 4 say lawsuits would end the same way.
Virtually everything that has to do with immigration gets litigated. But, our view is that it is completely in compliance with federal law.
Ira Melman works for the Federation for American Immigration Reform, who helped craft the Arizona law.
Any law enforcement officer, actually any local government official, based on certain requirements, can inquire about people's immigration status.
Arizona eventually stopped enforcing parts of 1070 after boycotts and protests. But from now until SB 4 takes effect, sides will lawyer up in Texas.
The bill also includes an amendment which makes it a crime if local officials do not comply with the law. The amendment would allow an elected official, like a sheriff, to be removed from office for not following provisions of the bill. And one question is what happens when the victim of a crime is also an illegal immigrant? Opponents of SB 4 worry the bill could make some victims and witnesses less likely to testify against dangerous criminals. Travis County District Attorney Margaret Moore tells us her office is working with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, on a solution.
What we're going to do, we've told ICE this, we're going to give our victims a letter from this office that says this person is a victim and or a witness essential to the prosecution of case X. If you have this person in your custody, would you please contact this office? That would then, if they do that, if they honor that request, then we would have the opportunity to file a writ to get them back into our jurisdiction for testimony.
The district attorney says ICE officials told her they are not interested in targeting victims of crime. However, they did not commit to following Moore's plan.
Regardless of whether or not that fear is founded or unfounded, my job to her is to make sure that she doesn't feel fear.
Fear plays a factor in one lawmaker's support for Senate Bill 4, how his testimony led to some heated moments on the House floor.
I'm focused on keeping our community safe.
Plus, I'll speak one-on-one with the man behind Senate Bill 4 and get his thoughts on complaints about the bill and what's next for the measure. Now, the Sanctuary Cities legislation approved by the House got its start in the state Senate. I spoke with Senator Charles Perry, the author of the bill, about what the next steps are and what will happen when this bill becomes law. Do you like what you see, or are there still going to be some changes, you think?
There'll be some changes, reconciliation through conference committee, and there always are. I've been very encouraged. My House colleagues held a very strong and tough bill together and kept it through the whole process. A long debate and a lot of passion and emotions, as you'd expect, but it's great to live in a place where those can be heard.
Now, are there any details we still have to work out, or
yeah,
is this going to be
there's
pretty...
a few in the conference committee. You know, we've got to look at, I know that they took out the state grants, and I think that's an okay takeout. We'll discuss that, but we've got enough fines and punitive fines for each jurisdiction accruing on a daily basis for each offense. It adds up, so you probably don't need to withhold state funding, and truthfully, I think coming from the Senate, that was one of those negotiables because you really don't want to punish innocent third-party bystanders for the actions of someone else. So I think that'll stay. A good change. There was the dropping of the 3-judge panel. I think we want to probably at least consider putting that back in. That gave us an insulation from local politics playing a role in enforcement of this.
Best case scenario, when is this on the governor's desk?
I bet we go to conference next week and have it on the governor's desk for signing within 2 weeks, is my prediction.
Here in Travis County, we're one of the few places in Texas that kind of had to grapple with this issue on the ground. With Sheriff Hernandez. She had the policy where she was only going to hold ICE detainers on these 4 kind of worst of the worst crimes. Now, did that play a role?
So I filed this bill last session, and it's been filed previous sessions. As with any big piece of legislation, and I think is a good thing, it took several sessions to get it right. So this had nothing to do with Travis County Sheriff's actions as we entered the session or came through the session. I will not going to kid you, politics of the day, we had a pretty active governor involved in that discussion, and her actions, I think, only highlighted the need to do it. But was it because of her actions that we did it? Absolutely not.
The biggest thing was over the detainer or arrest, when you can ask for immigration status. It came over from you guys as when there's a criminal investigation happening, right? That's what a detainer is, lawful detainer, where a crime might have occurred. Why pick that and not the arrest?
I understand the sensitivity to that, but I have to, one, trust my law enforcement to do what they're supposed to do and not abuse. Number 2, it's against the law to do what they suggest could happen. Profiling is against the law. With or without SB 4, unfortunately, that still happens. So had it not passed or would have didn't come about, SB 4 was not proposed, that profiling issue still existed. But it's important from Texas's perspective. We are the southernmost tip of the country. We have a fairly porous border, allowing legal and illegal activity on a daily basis. In a day when human trafficking, sex trafficking, drugs, and all of those things continue to be a recurring theme that we deal with in the state, it only makes sense to me to give the frontline officer, the boots on the ground, the opportunity, once facts are surveyed, experiences included, could ask or should ask, because it may lead to something bigger.
When it comes to the racial profiling issue, you said it's going to happen either way. Is there anything that we can do to stop that? Because that is the fear that this would lead to.
Hire good people. Hire people of integrity. Train them well. Educate them on well. Trust that they'll use good discretion and common sense in that. The truth of the matter is it's a lot of work once you start that process. So I don't think you're going to have this overwhelming sense of police officers running out here to fight this war, so to speak. But I want to continue to reiterate, this didn't change what's already current law. They have the ability to do it. We just had some jurisdictions that prohibited that. So you want the opportunity for an officer to exercise his discretion based on the facts he's dealing with at that point to be able to do what he thinks is best to keep the other 99.9% law-abiding citizens safe. That's the other issue. You know, we always talk about the potential abuse, but we also have to balance that with there are a large part of this country, fortunately, that do live by the law. And anytime you start having discretionary application with prejudice, if you will, on who is and isn't going to be upheld to the law, you undermine the law-abiding citizens of this country, and you begin to give a shaky foundation to the civil society we all enjoy.
Now, since it did bring up so many emotions throughout this legislative session, any steps that, you know, both sides need to take to kind of make this as constructive as possible going forward?
Absolutely. Education, information, we have a responsibility and accountability to answer to make sure those communities that had those fears, one, they're not true, and alleviate them. And I hope that those that were opposite of this bill will take that on and not sensationalize it for political gain. You know, first thing in the time, the statutory statute of the state, that we will actually codify that victims of crime or witnesses to crime can come forth with that information without fear of having their immigration status checked. So we've done some good things to move that, but the messaging out there has been totally negative against that. So we just need our boots on the ground, our frontline officers, to get into those communities and build those relationships, build that trust without SB4 even. That's an initiative I think we all as a country can live with.
Senator Perry, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been good. Appreciate it.
House Democrats have a much different take on the Sanctuary Cities bill. We'll hear from one local representative who played a role in the debate.
Hate is a pretty damn good emotion. It's a pretty good motivator for action, isn't it?
And we'll look at one of the most heated moments from the debate, how a question of fear caused a feisty exchange between House members on opposite sides of the issue. This week, we've been looking closer at this week's vote to pass Sanctuary Cities bill. Some of the most heated testimony came in exchange between House members on opposite sides of the measure. It started as Dallas Republican Jason Villalba spoke in favor of the bill.
Mr. Chairman, what I know is when I knock on the door of the little old lady, when I deliver Meals on Wheels, and I talk to her about what she's concerned about, what I hear from her is fear. Regardless of whether or not that fear is founded or unfounded, my job to her is to make sure that she doesn't feel fear. And I'm sorry if
would
the
you
numbers,
agree with me, Mr. Villalba?
I'm sorry if the numbers don't support that.
Yeah, the numbers don't support that,
But
Mr. Villalba.
that's not why I act. I act to make sure that she feels safe.
Oh my gosh. You don't act based on data. You act based on emotion. Is that what you're suggesting right
Not
now?
Not at all.
Okay.
It's not
You
all.
are.
It's not all what I've said.
And hate is a pretty damn good emotion. It's a pretty good motivator for action, isn't it?
Sir, again.
And I'm not suggesting it's yours, but it may be the motivation for people who do not feel safe, despite the fact that Texas complies with more ICE detainers than any other state in the country.
Sir,
Are you also aware?
You have stood on the front mic several times this session and impugn the good reputations of the men and women of this body by how you feel. You feel they're racist. You feel that they're not being appropriate. I'm saying to you
Jason,
today.
I never called you out. Now I'm calling you out because you mentioned my name, and I want to have this conversation.
Let's have it.
Joining us now for Insight is Representative Eddie Rodriguez. He's the policy chair for the Mexican-American Legislative Caucus. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
What do you take of that video clip right there?
Well, I was there. I saw it happening. It showed the intensity of the debate. It shows how emotional this issue is for many of us, and it showed how important it really is.
And you know, what is that message that they're doing this to make people feel safe? What do you take out of that?
Well, I mean, listen, I think we need to look at facts and we need to look at data. The fact is, if you're looking at violent crimes or serious crimes, it's not committed predominantly by immigrant population. That's just not the facts. So our motivation should be on trying to pass solid, sound policy that really moves the state forward, not just something that's not real. And I think that's what the exchange that everyone just saw really just expressed that. I don't think we should be legislating out of emotion and fear. That's just something we shouldn't be doing.
If there was a lot of anger in that, there was a lot of tears that night. How emotional is this for the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, or just Democratic House members in general?
Yeah, well, I think what a lot of people don't understand, perhaps a lot of my Republican colleagues don't understand, whether or not I'm an immigrant or any given member of the legislature is an immigrant. We do have some members that came in as immigrant, undocumented even. It's important because it's just a matter of generations before you do see that there's someone from Mexico or from another country that comes into this country. Our whole state is founded by immigrants. Our whole country is. So for me, for example, you go back to the early 1900s when my family fled Mexico from the revolution, and have been in this country pretty much ever since. And that's on just one side. But why it's so important is just because we have family. It touches us personally. These are people that are like us, people that we have family members that are like them, and that's why it's so personal.
Walk me through. There was a couple hours in the night where there seemed to be a deal was made to accept some type of watered down version of the bill. What happened in those couple hours?
Well, I'll just correct you slightly. It wasn't about a watering down version of the bill. There was an amendment that we wanted to try to, as hard as we can, to prevent it from getting on. The amendment made a bad bill even worse, essentially. And so we had negotiated that we were going to they were going to pull that amendment down, and that we were going to try to just find some of our more important amendments and just really fight on those, and then call it a day after maybe midnight or 1 o'clock or whatever that might turn out to be. And we had reached that agreement. Even within the Democratic caucus, we had reached an agreement. We had negotiated one or two other little points. We were negotiating that, and then the author of that amendment decided he didn't want to pull it down anymore. So then it was off to the races, and we were fighting until the end.
And that amendment is now allowing police officers to ask for immigration status before an arrest.
Before an arrest.
So when they're in the detention process.
And more than that, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, more than that, it allows, this applies to college campuses, it applies to school districts. So you might have a AISD police person asking parents as they're picking up their kid from school, show me your papers. So essentially that amendment was a show me your papers amendment, and made it a whole lot worse. A bill that's not necessary, that wasn't good in the first place, made it a lot worse.
And this came over from the Senate, and I talked to the Senate author, Senator Charles Perry. When I asked him, when we're talking about this issue of racial profiling, he says the defense is you got to hire good people. What about that? I mean, is that enough? I mean, nobody's, shouldn't we expect our police officers, our law enforcement agencies to do the right thing on this?
We should expect that. I think most of them, a vast majority of them do the right thing. That's not a question. But when you take it from, okay, someone's already arrested, they've done something that causes that arrest, and we could debate how minor that might be or how serious that might be. At least that person has been arrested, they're in jail perhaps, maybe being fingerprinted. That's a very different thing than just someone, whether it's an officer on the street or at the University of Texas or whatever it is. Just how do you figure out who you want to ask that question to? It's almost, in my opinion, impossible to do it without racial profiling.
And when we're talking about big picture of this, this is probably the first, state-based immigration law that we've had since President Trump was elected. I mean, when you're talking to the Hispanic community, people who did come here illegally, what are they telling you?
They're scared. There's just no doubt about it. They feel like at any moment they could be deported. Some of these people that I've talked to, that talked to me personally or talked to my office, have been here over 20 years, even more than that. And they're just scared, and they feel like they haven't broken any laws. They're paying their taxes when they buy something. They had children in school. They even have children that were born here in Austin, and they're worried that something like this could tear that family apart. And in fact, sadly, they're correct. If this bill becomes law, a parent who has a child that was born here could easily be deported from this country, and what's going to happen to that child?
Really quick, for the next 30 seconds, what are the steps here from now? I mean, are we going to get sued over this? I mean, is that probably the only step left to take? Well,
the next procedural step is the Senate will either concur with it or we'll go to conference on it to to address some, whatever differences there might be. I suspect it'll be there'll be concurrence. Yeah, there'll be a lawsuit. This is another example on a line of different bills that the Republican-led legislature has done that is intentionally discriminatory. The courts have said that about redistricting. They've said that about voter ID. They're going to say that about this. And the bad news is that the taxpayers have to pay for these lawsuits. So we're passing a bill here, or they are, that they know is going to be unconstitutional. It's going to be challenged in the courts, and it'll be thrown out.
Representative Eddie Rodriguez, thanks so much.
Thank you.
You've noticed that your regular host, Josh Hinkle, is away this week. That's because he's in our nation's capital picking up an award for the State of Texas program. Our KXAN investigative team won a prestigious Walter Cronkite Award for the border splurge investigation featured on State of Texas. Judges praised how the report held elected officials accountable and featured people directly impacted by the state's border security policies. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. Stay tuned for Meet the Press coming up at 9. I'm Phil Prazen. Have a great day.